What is going on YouTube? Gabus here and welcome to the 9th episode of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. Hope everyone's doing alright. So let's jump right to the first news of the day. And we're talking about GNOME. The new GNOME 3.36 release is shaping out to be a pretty great one according to the latest news here. So the first thing I want to talk about is a new GNOME Core app specifically made to work with your extensions. So enable them, disable them, and all that sort of stuff. You can see a screenshot from the pull request that Florian Müllner made to the GNOME Shell repo. And this is actually a pretty simple concept, but it's one thing that we really needed in the GNOME desktop, an app specific to manage extensions, as GNOME Tweak Tool, or GNOME Tweaks as it has been renamed recently, isn't really all that polished, and includes, to be honest, it includes quite a lot of stuff and can get confusing. It does a whole lot of different things, and having an extension app built into GNOME, and most importantly, this is baked into the actual GNOME shell, so it's not a third-party app that you have to go ahead and download or hope that your distribution will just ship with your desktop environment. If you have GNOME 3.36, you will likely have this app too. So it's a very simple concept. Again, it just allows you to manage extensions. It differentiates between manually installed. Let me actually enlarge this screenshot so you can see better. It divides manually installed extensions from extensions.gnome.org and built-in extensions, which are the ones that you will find in your you will install from your package manager, be it apt, rpm, or Pacman. And one of the nice thing is that it notifies the user when an extension has an update and needs to be updated, and apparently it will be able to automatically update your extensions and restart your GNOME session all in with the press of just one button, which is pretty convenient, and also, again, a very nice addition to the GNOME Shell desktop. And speaking of GNOME, this is not all of the news for 3.36. In the latest beta, they announced that they're going to replace some of the default apps. So most notably, Rhythmbox will be replaced by GNOME Music, and Shotwell will be replaced by GNOME Photos, and Evolution will be replaced by a combination of GNOME Calendar and Geary. So on this particular point, I just want to make a quick note here, because I'm not really sure we're there yet with these core GNOME apps. I'm sure that they've gone a long way, and between 3.34 and 3.36, there's I'm pretty sure there's enough difference to justify the switch to them as the new default apps. But I think that particularly for Shotwell and Evolution, the feature difference is so wide that I really don't know if this is a good move. I mean, Shotwell, I haven't used it in quite a lot of time, but as far as I can recall, it has a whole lot of features, a whole lot more features compared to GNOME Photos. And maybe that's one direction they want to go towards. Maybe they just want to reduce the amount of features in their apps to make them more appealing for regular people that don't need to do a whole lot of stuff with their apps. Or maybe they just want to try and push forward the new apps. And the one thing I'm really sad about, to be honest, is the removal of Evolution. So just a quick note, I just want to be real clear here. It's not like they are discontinuing these apps. They will still be available, and you will still be able to download and install them. But as their general recommendation, if we can call it that, they're now defaulting to these new applications. So about Evolution, I think that Evolution is one of the best all-around software that we have on Linux, period. And it's ugly, very much so, to be honest, but it does its job very well. And the integration with the contacts and the calendar and the email, it's just one of the really all-around best apps out there for Linux in general. And particularly since I started doing some freelance work here and there, or since I started this new year in university, I've actually made great use of Evolution for both managing multiple accounts, multiple email accounts, and managing my calendar, all in a very simple and straightforward fashion, and particularly all in one integrated app. So I'm not really sure that GNOME Calendar has all of the calendar features that Evolution has, and I'm quite 100% sure that Geary doesn't have half of the features Evolution has in terms of email. But still, probably this is a move to just move their applications forward. So if that's the case, I hope they will manage to reach feature parity with the apps they're replacing, and most importantly, a good level of stability, because at the end of the day, that's what most of us care about with this. Like, I mean, for Shotwell and Rhythmbox, again, it's not really a big deal, but for Evolution, it's a very serious work app that many depend on. And I really hope that their new apps reach the level of polish and stability that Evolution has. Other changes that they added a blur shader to the shell, and the blur effect has been quite popular since, well, I think it was either Mac OS or Windows that pioneered it, and it's been a while since KDE Plasma actually has integrated it, and we on the GNOME land, we always wanted this kind of effect for themes and stuff, but apparently there's no built-in blur shader inside of GNOME, so possibly this new addition will mean that we will be able to create themes that make use of this feature, or even just integrate it into GTK apps. That'd be really sweet. Other changes include changes to scrolling and swiping gestures. These are pretty much, I'm pretty sure these are quality of life features that are very much appreciated. and then per monitor work areas, which is something I really I would really make a lot of use for. One thing with GNOME and workspaces is that you just have like one set of by default you have just one set of workspaces on the primary monitor, and on all secondary monitors it's just one workspace. And to enable workspaces on those other monitors, you need to enable a toggle inside of GNOME Tweaks, and that mostly works, but still you won't get like the preview in the dash showing you the workspaces. So as the current situation, workspaces on GNOME, they work great, but without extensions they're not really that workable if you just have one monitor. And as far as I can tell, this change should fix things for multi-monitor workspaces, so that's a very welcome change. And the two last noteworthy changes that I want to make that I want to talk about are memory leak fixes, and particularly Matter memory leak fixes, which are again very appreciated, and in particular a memory leak with the built-in VP9 screen recording. So if you don't know, GNOME has a built-in screen recording functionality that you can use, and that's pretty useful mostly on Wayland, considering that there are not many apps that can record your screen on Wayland yet. So having a built-in screen recorder into the shell has proven quite convenient in quite a lot of situations. And apparently they're using VP9 for their default encoder, and either the encoder or their implementation apparently has a pretty big memory leak. And I've actually noticed that since the the integrated screen recording in GNOME is very resource intensive, and if you try to record something larger than like a 30-second video, it pretty much hogs your entire system. So this should be now fixed, and they're switching to the VP8 encoder for their screen records, which is an older encoder but still pretty good, and should at least if it fixes the memory leak issue, I think it's worth it. And at the end of the day, it's just a codec. It's not really a big deal in terms of like actual difference. And Blackstorm 5000 says hello in the chat room. Hi, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the live. Appreciate you could make it. So back to the news. We're talking about Ubuntu, and they're apparently going to improve their install procedure, the install or the reinstall experience on their certified OEM laptops. So we're talking about all of those laptops, or I think there are some desktop computers as well that come with Ubuntu by default, and they get certified by Canonical for Ubuntu. And one scenario that you could think of is people just wanted to reinstall the operating system, and of course, since it's Ubuntu, they go to the Ubuntu website to get their ISO. But things don't always go that smoothly, considering that depending on the device, it may have some additional software specific to the hardware, or some additional drivers, or even a different version of the kernel to accommodate for the newer hardware. And if like a normal user just goes ahead and downloads the latest LTS version of Ubuntu and reinstalls it on their machine, the experience is not going to be exactly the same as the out-of-the-box experience when they actually got the laptop. So apparently Canonical is working on solving this issue in a way. They're trying to so they will probably they will bake in some sort of detection into the ISO in Grub in particular to identify OEM certified laptops and change the installation experience based on the actual device. And so probably the user-facing experience could change. Maybe if you get like a Dell laptop with Ubuntu and you just start the live ISO, you will get a Dell branded installer or something like that. I don't know. But this will enable the installer to let the user install a newer kernel to make up for the for the newer hardware, as well as enabling OEM specific repos for additional packages or specific drivers that they may need. So this is actually a very interesting change, and it's probably the first time we see something like this from any upstream operating system that's not Apple, but that's a different story. So very interesting idea, very welcome change. Hope they can get this worked and ready for the 2004 LTS, and who knows, probably it's 2 months away at this point. I don't know if they will make it, but I surely hope they do. And speaking of Ubuntu, let's segue to our next story of the day. Unity 8 is going upstream. Well, kinda. So Unity 8 is the new desktop, kind of new desktop environment based on the Qt toolkit that's been developed by Canonical when they actually started the Ubuntu Phone project. Now, Ubuntu Phone or Ubuntu Touch has since been abandoned by Canonical, but the community, of course, picked it up. And we actually talked about this quite a few times on the program. And so the Ubuntu Touch project has been picked up by the UBports community, and it's been going pretty strongly, really. And apparently, probably related to the recent changes they made. I talked about these in the previous episode of the TechPills weekly live stream. So if you wanna know more, go ahead and check it out. And those changes are mostly to do with enabling Mir as an actual Wayland compositor. So this is probably the change that is now enabling Unity 8 to be packaged for Debian. You heard it right. So some people are actually trying to package up Unity 8 and Mir for Debian, so that you will be able to install it just from the repos. And this is great news. It means that the D is probably ready for more distributions, and this would mean that it could be used on well, I could use it on Arch for starters, as soon as someone decides to port the package or make an AUR package for it. And once it comes out, I will surely give it a try at least. And it's possible that it will be available on phone distributions like Postmarket OS. So that's really exciting. I'd really fancy having like a Postmarket OS based operating system with the Ubuntu Touch interface or desktop environment on top of it. It's really interesting. Also, you could also have the possibility to change your desktop environment depending on what you want to do. That's pretty nice. Honestly, great job to UBports team and to everyone involved in the porting to Debian, and I'm really excited to try it out. Let's switch gears a little bit here. We're talking about Pacman, the Arch Linux package manager that's not really just used by Arch Linux. But anyway, apparently there's some more going on to enable parallel downloads on Pacman. So as far as I can tell, this is not an official this is nothing officially done by the Arch people, but it's a fork of the original Pacman package with, again, parallel downloads enabled. And if you don't know what parallel downloads means, it means that when you just, I don't know, want to perform a system update, or you want to install a package that has some dependencies and you have to download a whole bunch of stuff, what normally happens with most package managers, Pacman included, is that the actual package files are downloaded one by one. And in a way, you could think that makes sense, since, well, you have so much internet bandwidth, and it's unlikely that you have a faster connection than the mirrors where the packages are hosted. So it doesn't hurt to just do it do it the easy way and just download packages progressively instead of in a parallel fashion. But there are some situations where that could help, starting with, for example, if you have multiple small downloads. For instance, just initializing the download for one small file takes some time by itself. So if you, instead of downloading like bunch of small packages one by one, you download like 4 at a time, it should theoretically make things a little bit faster for the end user. And it would also make up for something like a particularly slow mirror. I don't know. It happens that in some particular times some mirror is overloaded with requests, and it's acting slowly even though it's normally a very fast mirror. So it makes sense to actually parallelize the download so that you can even download from multiple mirrors at the same time, even with the added benefit of splitting the load between different mirrors. I don't know if they're trying to do that, but I think it'd be a pretty easy change to a pretty easy addition to make to this work that they're doing. So parallel downloads on Pacman, they're probably coming soon. I really hope they make it upstream, as it's a very nice feature. I would make quite a lot of use of. But anyway, let's switch gears one last time to the next topic of today. And so this is a pretty involved topic, and I really wanted to get in depth with it because I've actually talked about it a couple of times in this program already. And we're talking about Systemd Home D. And if you don't know what that is, just stay tuned. I'll explain it in a second. So Leonard Pottering made a talk at FOSDEM 2020 explaining the concept and the inner workings of Systemd Home D. So Systemd Home D is a new mechanism built into Systemd that's of which the goal is to eventually replace the standard home folder and user mechanism that Linux uses, and mostly all kind of Unix-like systems use. So this is a very audacious change, if you will, because replacing something so deeply rooted into the history and the inner workings of a Unix operating system, really, it's not an easy task. But there are some problems with the current implementation, and Systemd Home D will try to address them. So I actually prepared some notes here. I actually watched the entire 1 hour video presentation that Leonard Pottering made at FOSDEM, and I'll try to explain it to you in a nutshell. So the main problem here is that home is a directory, but it needs a matching entry in /etc/passwd. And this is the file where all the information about your user is saved, and also it's mirrored in a way to the other file /etc/shadow, which contains the actual hash of your password. The problem here is that for one, etc needs to be writable, and that goes towards it's counter. It's problematic mostly for systems where the root directory or just even etc should not be writable. Think OS3 based systems, or a system with an immutable root partition, or something like Fedora Silverblue, which should be one of those things, or a mix of the two. So if you have an immutable file system, it's kind of weird to just edit a couple of files in the root to add users. And of course, it mixes the concept of state and configuration in a way that's not really very intuitive, and it's overall messy. The other problem is that UIDs, the user ID, the numeric user IDs associated with the username, need to be propagated between systems. Think of NFS shares and in general shared distributed systems. If you have a user, and there are many cases where you want that user to have the same user ID across all machines, and across services, and that's a big problem. And there is a lot of infrastructure to try to propagate these changes, but this shouldn't really actually need to happen in the first place. And the new direction where systemd Home-D tries to go towards is making UIDs artifacts of the local file system, of the local system, not something that's global to the entire system. And one other problem is with encryption. And if you think about it, mostly with computing these days, we mostly have like single user computers. You think about your laptop, or your desktop PC, or your phone, it's just a single user machine. But there are some situations, even just normal ones, where you share your device with multiple people. Think you have a desktop or a laptop that you share with your brother or sister, or with your girlfriend or boyfriend. And of course, this opens up to a weird situation where if you want to encrypt your hard drive, you want to do full disk encryption, you have to use a password for the encryption, and then a separate password for the user account. And that's kind of weird, because you have to share a password between users, and that's really not something that should happen with encryption, with passwords in general. Would you really share a password? I mean, it's not like the best practice, particularly for something as sensitive as encryption. And when you think about it, once you decrypt your hard drive, all of your files are available. So if one of the users that has access to your system has some malicious intents, or gets attacked by a malicious third party, all of a sudden all of your files are exposed, because they're not encrypted. Because even if the user is logged in as, well, another user, the hard drive still needs to be decrypted, because you need the other users need to access the system, and the password is shared. And of course, there are other problems related to encryption and authentication, including stuff like YubiKeys, biometric login, all the kind of stuff. It's not really possible with the current authentication system in Linux. It's just hacked on top of it, if you think about it, with different systems. But it's not an elegant solution, and it's prone to breakage, and it makes for those Leonard Botterian calls them sidecar databases. So it means that you have like this external database that you have to sync with your main one, your main one being /etc/passwd. And that's not really a great solution. And they're also not extendable. Not extendable in the sense that so the etc passwd record is the same since Unix, really, since the 80s. And it's all those 6 fields, and that's all. You can't add any more information. If you want to add more information, like for instance your actual name or a user picture, you have to add that on top using, again, sidecar databases, and that gets messy pretty quick. So the focus of systemd Home-D here is trying to build a home directory for human users as opposed to system users. This is particularly focused for home users, so it's not really built for servers or big systems, as far as I can tell. Leonard makes an example with laptops, where I have 1 or 2 users, or anyway, not any more than 10. And the concept here is trying to contain home directories in one single file. So the home directory itself should now so the existence of the home directory should synthesize the user, the concept of the user. So if I have like a file that's like a disk image that's /home/gabmus .home, that the mere existence of that file should synthesize the existence of the user Gabmus. And there are a whole lot of consequences and technical technical gibberish that goes along with this thing, like the fact that the UID is assigned on the first time you sign into your machine, and it's actually saved on the host machine the first time you sign into your systemd Homed user. So it's always built in a way to accommodate for compatibility with the existing infrastructure, but it's built to be more modern. And again, the concept here is that one file only will represent your user, as opposed to a mix of files and different directories scattered into your system. And the idea here is, okay, this is not like mandatory, because a systemd Homed has like 3 different backends, but the recommended system that you should use with systemd Homed whenever it's possible to be used is with LUKS. LUKS is the Linux encryption system. And what happens is you create your home directory is actually a disk image file that's LUKS encrypted, and whenever you log in, your user password and your encryption password are actually the same. So you just log in once. Of course, that will need some work from the current display managers like GDM or whatever, but it's not really like it's that big of a deal. So once you log in, your home directory or your home file gets decrypted and mounted to the appropriate directory in the file system. And this actually makes a whole lot of sense because first of all, it eliminates the problem with encryption and with shared passwords. So you can have like 10, 15, 20 different users, and all of them has an encrypted file system. And even root, if root doesn't know, if an administrator doesn't know the encryption password to your particular home directory, they won't be able to access your data, which is actually pretty awesome if you ask me. One other very important change here is that user entries will be accompanied by some metadata in form of a JSON text that's actually connected to your home file. And all of this metadata is really to be able to add and extend the information in the metadata that's assignable to the user. So think about your actual name, even your email or your photo, or whatever you can think of that needs to be associated with your account can be integrated into this JSON metadata file, which is again pretty awesome change. I went pretty long into this topic, to be honest, and I don't really want to bore you too much with the details. But anyway, it's a very interesting concept. It's a very interesting idea. I know that many of you despise systemd. Many in the Linux community really despise systemd and all of the change it's trying to bring to Linux. But at the end of the day, I think this is a very interesting modernization that's happening with systemd, and that's and it's actually something that's really needed to bring Linux into the 2020s. Anyway, let's now move on to the last news of the day before a little rant that I wanted to make. And the news here is I'm working on a new app. And let me actually share the screen here. So this new app is called WhatEP. It's really a very simple concept. I ran into a post made by Tobias Bernhard. Well, more of a post. It's a GitLab repository where he lists a whole lot of app ideas for, I don't know, him or other people to implement. And it's actually let me actually do something real quick here. I want to scale the window. All right, 2 times. That's better for streaming. Hey, for scaling, right? Anyway, that's a very nice thing that he's doing. Actually giving suggestions to developers that want to contribute in a way for some apps that they can make for the GNOME desktop and the GNOME phone experience at this point, considering that GTK has Handy now and all of those nice things that make it usable for phones. And one of the apps that he suggested to make is called is basically What's My IP app. And I'm actually showing my IP right now. That's pretty dumb. Anyway, I don't think any of you is malicious, and I will just reset my IP once once I go offline. I can't. Come on. Alright, that's dumb. Okay. I'm trying to censor my actual IP here. Hopefully it just works. Anyway, again, not that big of a deal. We'll change my IP once I restart, once I end the live stream. Anyway, as you see here, it's a very simple app, and it's actually in a very early stage of development. And I'd really like to know your feedback on it and know if you have anything to add to, if you have anything you want to see in this app and some improvements that you maybe want to make. So very simple interface. This is actually the icon, which I'm pretty proud of. I actually designed this in collaboration with my girlfriend, and I don't know, it's just nice. And what it does is it shows the IP of your various connections in your system. So it shows the internet, your public IP address, as well as your location based on that IP, and your local IP addresses of the local network interfaces that you have in your system. And this includes also virtual network interfaces. So if you're using something like libvirt for virtual machines or VirtualBox, and you have a NAT going on and you want to SSH into your virtual machine, you just want to know what's your what's your virtual network IP. You can just do it from this app. I mean, you can just open a terminal and write IP space address, but this is more oriented towards either new users, experienced users, or phone users where using a terminal isn't actually really all that convenient. It doesn't end here. It also shows, anyway, the internet, the public address and the location are actually pretty useful too, especially if you're using something like a proxy or a VPN and you want to make sure that you're not actually located in your actual location, but instead in the location the VPN hides you. One of the nice feature is, let me actually censor some things here. Oh no, I can't censor anything here. Too bad. Whatever, doesn't really show anything important. One of the nice feature is the ports. There's WhatIP also shows you the open ports on your system and allows you to see some information about them. First of all, if it's either TCP or UDP, and the service that should be connected to the port. Now, just know that this information is not actually 100% reliable. I actually pulled this information from /etc/services, which should tell you, particularly for reserved ports, the service that the port uses. But again, that's not 100% reliable. It's just more of an indication of what it should be. It also lists, shows the address it's listening on, and you can also test it by using you can test the connection from an external network to your local port to see if it's reachable from outside. Just press this button here, test connection. And after it sends a request, you can see the port in this case is unreachable from outside, which is a pretty useful feature and something that really could be useful, particularly if you're trying to self-host a service, or if you have if you want to set up remote access to your PC, or even if you have like something like I don't know, a Zonatic or a Minecraft server, and you want other people to be able to reach you, this is a nice way to test it. Again, it's a very simple app at this point. I'd really like to know what you think of it, and if you have any suggestions to actually improve it, that'd be really appreciated. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic of today, and last topic of today. It's just a rant that I've been wanting to make for quite a while, and it's about the so-called open source alternatives. And the problem here that I want to talk about is with professional software like for graphic design, for video editing, for compositing, for photo manipulation. We all know that the professional world is polluted by those very famous proprietary applications. I'm talking about all the Adobe suites, so Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Lightroom, Premiere Pro, After Effects, and all that kind of stuff. It's not all made by Adobe, it's just like the most popular ones are made by them. So that's what I'm quoting here. And the problem here is that, of course, these are not the only apps available for, I don't know, these kind of professional work. As we in the Linux community know quite well, there are like those so-called open source alternatives, and I really despise the term alternative because it's not representative of what those applications are capable of. If you tell me something like, well, you should try this alternative to X, you're basically telling me that this so-called alternative is like a copycat or an inferior version of X. The word alternative, it brings with itself a negative meaning intrinsically, which is most of the reason why I don't like it. I will use it for sake of conversation here, but just know that it's not one word that I really ever use when I actually speak to people. So anyway, the problem here is, particularly when we are trying to move people to Linux, many people actually do some professional work with their computers. Mostly graphic design is dominated by Photoshop and Illustrator, just to name two. And what happens is that when you tell those people, well, you cannot use your Adobe suite or your these or that on Linux, but you can use something like GIMP or Inkscape that are just as good, those people, they usually, if not always, dismiss those quote-unquote alternatives as either too difficult or not what they're used to, or inferior based on ignorance or popular belief. And this is actually pretty sad to me, and particularly more than to me, I think it's pretty sad to the people that work countless hours and put their sweat and blood into these software, because it's software that I use mostly daily in my life. I'm not a designer, I'm not a photographer, but I am a video editor and I am a developer, and I happen to need to do some actual let's call it creative work that requires professional software. And I don't think that well, I mean, I'm not particularly capable by myself, because again, I'm not a designer, okay? But I think for being self-taught, that what I'm doing is actually pretty good, and I don't think that I would be able to do any better with like one of those professional proprietary softwares. But people think people think the opposite. People think that they need the software to actually do their job, and that's just simply not it. And probably the main reason, and that's what I really wanted to talk about here. The main reason why this happens is education. When you see people going to like art university or academy or whatever you call it, depending on your country, or like design university or cinema university or cinema college, whatever, what they teach people, they just teach the quote unquote industry standard software that they need to use: Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, Premiere, After Effects. That's most of it. That's really sad. And I'm pretty sure that most of the reason why they're doing it is that they probably have a like monetary incentive to actually push to actually push that proprietary software, because I'm pretty sure that companies like Adobe actually pay universities for this sort of sponsorship, because at the end of the day, it's a full-blown sponsorship. Because we Adobe are offering you our Creative Cloud suite for free for students, of course, but you will have to use it in your classes. That's very sad to me. That's very sad because particularly for the reason that if you want to get into one of those professional fields by yourself, you actually think you have to spend lots and lots of money on that software, when you don't need to. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay for software, and I'm definitely not endorsing piracy here. Piracy is actually worse than whatever shenanigans are going on with Adobe or other proprietary companies and education, but this just doesn't justify piracy in any way. And at the end of the day, if you're making money out of, or if you're planning to make money out of the work that you're doing with those professional softwares, at some point you either pay for it, or when someone goes to check, you get a big how I'm missing the English word for this. Sorry. Okay, just wait a second. I have to search for a word. Just doesn't come to my mind. Okay, you just at some point, if someone goes to check and you have a pirate software that you make money from, you get a fine that you'll need to pay. So you either pay the software or you pay the same money, if not more, in fines. So that's of course, in a professional environment, that's not really feasible. What happens is people don't realize that they don't need to pay for professional software to do professional work, because there's professional software that's free to use. I just want to make a quick note here. This software is of course free to use for everyone, and you can make money out of it, you can make whatever you want out of it. But of course, if you're using this software to make money, it's at least kind to donate to those projects, just to make sure that they will stick around. So when you make money out of software, it makes sense to donate to that software if it's open source and freely available. Because at the end of the day, what happens is that if people that cannot afford to buy professional software, or people who cannot afford to go to university or college or art academy or whatever, if they want to get into those professional fields with open source software, they just can. There's nothing in their way. They can just download the software for free, use it, learn how to do the job from internet courses or whatever, or they can get taught by someone else, and they can start their professional career without spending any money on software. And when they start getting money back from their study, if they want to, they really should. But I'm not here judging people. If they get money back from those software, they can just contribute back to the community. They can just donate to those projects. And this way, they're making it possible for other people to learn those tools, to be able to make more out of those open source tools, to improve them and to make them better day by day for everyone. And this is just more of why the open source model is really better overall. And I really hate to see people dismissing open source software as inferior compared to the proprietary alternatives. Here I'm using the word. So there's that. It's just a little rant that I wanted to make. I hope that if you have any different opinions, I'd really like to know about them, either in the chat or in the comments down below. But anyway, guys, I think this is gonna wrap it up for this episode of the Tech Pills Weekly livestream. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to press the thumbs up button down there. Also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. Also, guys, make sure to check out the Tech Pills community at techpills.technology/community and join one of either the Telegram group or the Discord server. You can find the QR codes over here. So thank you very much for watching again. I'll be seeing you in the next one.